day is gone. It's another day, and the clock is ticking, tick tock. My life has been renewed. Things has been so good. Oh God, I'm happy. 10 million more miles to go. I've got a very long way to go. Oh, but I'm not worried.
Hi, I'm Dr. Beverly Swanson-Powell, and welcome to What's Your Story? So glad to have you here in the studio with us. What's Your Story airs weekly, every Friday at 10 a.m. This Friday is no different. We actually are here because we are having an opportunity to have a platform available for people that have experienced extraordinary lives, extraordinary journeys that they have gone through, and they have this opportunity to share their journey with you. Why is that so important? Because the word of the Lord says, and I'm just paraphrasing, people are saved by the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of the gospel, but also the word of our testimonies. The things that we have gone through in our lives and made it through because the Lord has been with us along the way, despite how challenging it may have been. Encourages others. It gives others hope. It gives direction. So, this is why we have this show that airs weekly. What's Your Story? Now, I want you to know this show airs in over 93 countries around the world and growing. And it's also streamed live here on the social media. So, the more you share it, it adds to the countries to that 93. So I hope you take the time to do that, share it. And if you want to be alerted every time we come on the air, because of the 93 plus countries, it comes on at different times. So I would suggest that you go to my YouTube channel at Dr. Beverly L for Lynn, Swanson-Powell, and subscribe to the YouTube. That way, wherever you are around the world, when it airs, you will get an alert and you will not miss a single show. Also, the shows will be added to our website, which is soon to be completed because right now, Dr. Beverly is not in the United States. So please pardon our tardiness this morning. We are actually coming live from the country of Pakistan. So we're so glad that our guest was able to join us today. And we're so glad to be able to come to you on the air, even though we are not within the United States right now. So I want to tell you a little bit about this amazing guest that we have. I want you to know that I am absolutely honored. It's a privilege to have her on. I met her a couple of years ago, and I've been watching her through the years. And I'm so impressed with her, and I'm so impressed with her heart. This amazing woman is a survivor of human trafficking, and she has an incredible life story. And she shares her story. She shares her journey. She shares what she has gone through advocacy groups and throughout the United States. But not just that. The journey that she shares and her experiences has brought hope and it inspires others. How? Through education and training, through sharing what she has gone through and what she has learned along the way. She actually also trains hospital staffs around the United States, law enforcement, and other first time responders that respond to those that have been victimized by human trafficking. She's an amazing keynote speaker. And we are thrilled to have her here to share with each and every one of you on what's your story. We're going to bring this amazing woman into the studio right now. We're not going to hold it back any longer. So, this beautiful woman is brave. She's bold and she is amazing. I want to introduce you to this beautiful woman, and her name is Jenna Mckaye. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us on What's Your
Thank you.
Story?
Thank you for having me.
Mm. I want you to know she said yes, and she speaks all over the United States, but her personality is so humble. So I'm impressed she said yes. But as she shares her story, I really, really want you to listen intently. Why? Not just because you may or may not have been victimized yourself, but because this is worldwide. That's why it's so important to have her share her story worldwide. This is going on all around the world. It is as active today as it has been thousands of years ago. And it's time that we all become educated on what actually happens, what someone goes through, and how it affects them. The more we know, right, Jenna? The more we know, the more we can actively play a part in helping these young victims. So, Jenna, can you share with us what happened to you and at what age did it start?
So I was lured out of high school. I was 18. I was a senior. And I had about 5 more months of high school and was lured out and trafficked in my own community. And the person that was my trafficker, I met him in high school. He graduated a year before me. So he was already out living on his own. And he um, brought me out and moved me in with him and started me trafficking me there.
As a teenager trafficked you.
Yes, he was 1 year older. So I was 18 and he was 19 at the time.
So, exactly what do you mean by trafficked you? Are you talking about prostitution?
So trafficking is forcing somebody to work or have sex through force, fraud, and coercion. And so the way I was trafficked, uh, he advertised me online and sold me out of our apartment. Um, but there's over 25 ways that somebody can be trafficked. Mine just looked a little different than what might be the most common way.
My God, that is so important. And I ask you to break those three things down that you said again, because it is very important not to think as I said. I said, so are you talking about prostitution? And immediately she corrected me. It's so much bigger than that. And it's so much greater than that. And that's why we have to understand the right terminology and what, not only the right terminology, but what they are experiencing. This isn't just, I think I'm going to stand on the street corner and make some money. So I need you to go to back and explain those three things again. You said trafficking is what?
Forcing somebody to do labor or have sex through force, fraud, and coercion. And force is, restraining somebody, holding them down, a lot of threats, making them do the act. Fraud would be a couple examples, like, you're so beautiful, you could be a model, and then they're trafficked, lured away. Bringing somebody in from another country with the promise of a great job opportunity, and then holding money over their head saying they have to pay this back before they can go back to their country, which is called debt bondage. And then they're labor trafficked. So, and then coercion is really the threats, which is something mentally, it's psychologically, it really does hold the victim there. Threats against their family, their loved ones, threats to harm them more than they already are, and even the threat of death.
What was it that you experienced the most, Jenna?
Well, force was really the way that my trafficking looked, and definitely coercion. For me, I was headed to play college volleyball, and I was a good student athlete in my private Christian school in Southern California. And then this started happening to me, and I was ashamed enough, being a high school dropout and not going on and pursuing my college athletics, that now that this was happening, his threats of, I'll make this look like something we're involved in together, or, nobody will love you now. All these different things that he told me, you really believe them, especially at a young age. So the shame that you carry as a victim, which really isn't your shame, but you do feel that way when it's happening. And I had a lot of that, which was another reason it was scary for me to reach out for help.
So it actually started one way and migrated, because I heard force, shame, and I heard, as you were sharing, coercion.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounded like it started one way, and then he began to manipulate you to keep you where you are. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely wanted to keep me put. He married me, which really, I never refer to him as my ex-husband. He was never a husband to me. He was my trafficker. That's what he was. And but things like that he did to keep me there. He went as far as getting a restraining order against my dad to keep him away, telling me law enforcement would not protect me. I had negative experiences with law enforcement, which made me believe that. So a lot of big manipulation that a lot of traffickers are really good at, to keep their victims in place.
So it sounded like it actually started because you were in love with him.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people might hear, oh, well, you married him and you were boyfriend and girlfriend at some point, but I was so young. I think it was more of feeling stuck. My home life, my parents were separating at the time. My sisters were both gone at college. I didn't really have a lot of guidance. And adults around me were really only supporting me in my athletics. And as soon as I started making rebellious, poor choices, then everyone kind of disappeared. And so I felt like he was there with the getaway car, and I went, not knowing the world I was walking into. Yes, I believed he was, my boyfriend, but there was already abuse before the trafficking happened, domestic violence, even before we were married. It was an unhealthy relationship. So more of the feeling of feeling stuck and scared.
When did you realize that you were tied in to something that had control over your life?
Well, after the first night, I wanted to call home and I wanted to call the police, but all the things that had led up to that point, I didn't feel like those were options. And after it continued 2 or 3 more times, I felt really stuck and scared. But it wasn't every night and it wasn't every weekend. So there would be sometimes a few weeks that would go by and I would think, oh, so this won't happen again. Whatever that was, it's not going to happen anymore. And then it would progress and it would get worse and worse.
When did you realize that your mind was now completely overtaken by this new life, and you felt that the doors started to shut and there were no doors for you to go through? for help?
Well, I felt that way really even before the trafficking began, because once I dropped out of high school and threw away volleyball scholarship, I didn't think I could go back to it. It's something I still wanted, but I felt so forced and pressured to be with him, that I thought there's no way I can go back to that life. So whatever my life is with him is what it will be. And then when the trafficking began, I mean, I was just in survival mode. Everything I did, I thought I had to do to survive. And we talk about fight, flight, and freeze. Mm-hmm. And I freeze. That's my go-to, even though I went to all of those when I was experiencing trauma. But that we forget about the fourth one, which is appease. And you appease your abuser. For me, I would appease him. I would comply in fear that he would do something even worse to me. So you just do whatever you have to do to keep them happy.
A lot of times, Jenna, people look at the United States from other countries, and all they think about is California or New York, and they think big cities. Mm-hmm. And if you're from a big city, then you have everything going for you. There's every opportunity. Everything is available if you're from the United States. But I don't believe they understand that there's different type of cities and townships here. Some are very small and homey and intimate. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of opportunities for some people because of where they live in their small town. Tell us a little bit about your life, where you lived.
Yeah, well, and I grew up in actually, it was a safe community. I went to a private Christian school. I had two parents at home, two big sisters. I started playing sports, really competitive volleyball at the age of 12 with the goal of following in my sister's footstep and playing in college. And then, a lot of times traffickers will take their victims and move them city to city, state to state, sometimes to other countries. But mine kept me right there. I was 10 minutes from my school and 10 minutes from my home, trafficked right there in my community. And not only that, also working normal jobs during the day. So I would work at a boutique. There was a time period I worked at like a video store. I worked at a postal place, all while being trafficked at night. And I started slowly progressing, showing signs, physical signs. But nobody really asked any questions. Sometimes people would say, "Are you okay?" There's something off, but nobody took it a step further. And I wasn't in the place to speak up for myself. So, and it's really that mentality too of, well, we live in a safe community, so she must be fine. Nothing like that. There's no way she's being trafficked. I'm sure that never crossed their mind. So that's why education is so important, so we can be aware of the signs.
Yes, because you lived a normal life by day, and by night you were in a completely abusive world, and nobody knew you were in trouble. Mm-hmm. As you have been used around the United States and sent to different states to talk about your experience, how often are you finding out that your story is not unique at all?
Well, when I first started speaking, I didn't realize how many other survivors there were. I wanted to do this work, and I started meeting other survivors and victims and learning their stories. And that's when I started to realize how many ways it happens. And that I'm really just, even though my story is unique in a lot of ways, there are a lot of Jennas out there. It does happen this way, and it happens a lot of ways. And the way it looks, in New York or San Diego or Texas or the Philippines or Russia, it may all look different based on the vulnerabilities and the cultures of those communities. But for the victim, the pain inside is still the same. And that's what we have in common. The pain that we feel and experience of what it's like to be exploited in that way. And then the healing journey. And it may look a little different for everybody, but we all want that healing and we all deserve that.
It's interesting that she said other countries, other cultures, it may look a little different, but ultimately it's the same. I constantly hear, and it's brought to my attention, um, being used around the world. For other countries, they are experiencing just what you talked about before as one of the categories. And you were saying labor and debt, where they're actually being sent to another country and trafficked in another country for money to pay debts back home. And they are completely trapped in this life that they didn't know was going to be their life. Many of them had been bamboozled. They think that they're going for a job, a new life. They're going to be employed at this and that. And they're, whoever it is they're trafficking, whether it's parents or sibling or friends, they're given a lot of money and they're shipped off, and the family doesn't see them again.
Hmm.
It's happening a lot in various countries. It would be so advantageous, Jenna, for you to be able to travel outside this country and address the other issues that are being experienced, because it's one thing that you said is the most important above all. Everyone has the right to be healed.
Yes. And that brings up such a good point. There's a documentary by this great organization called Exodus Cry, and it's actually free on YouTube. It's called Nefarious. And they went around the world and they interviewed victims and survivors and advocates. And they also interviewed traffickers and buyers. And there was this one situation somewhere in Asia, it might have been the Philippines, but these little girls were being trafficked at a karaoke bar. And so this organization went in and they asked the girls if they wanted help and that they would take them out and they'd get them, put them in a safe home, they'd get them their education, the healing therapies, all the things they needed. And there was one that said yes, and they said, but you have to call my mom and my dad. And they called the parents and they said, hey, we can take your daughter. Well, the parents were the traffickers. They were the ones that were selling her. So they said to them, well, we'll help you. We'll give you whatever money you need. We'll give you an education. We'll give you trades, job skills, whatever. So you both can, all of you can build a new life. And they still said no. So it's not as simple as saying, is just rescuing a girl and giving her a new life. This is like years and years of a way of them doing things, thinking that this is the only way they can make money. So to break that is so much more than just going in and rescuing a girl. And we have to start with, the culture of the community and employment opportunities and education. And it's a great deal of work. It can be done, but it's so much more than what we might think it is.
Are you finding in the United States that they're getting the younger and younger, the victims of the traffickers?
Well, 12 to 14 is the average age. But there's also this 18 to 24-year-old age, kind of like the college years. And sometimes, I can speak from an experience where I've helped a girl get out of the life. She was getting her GED. She was working. She finally had her own place. She ended up getting pregnant and having the baby, and she was taking care of the baby and taking all these positive steps forward. And then she went back to the life. And so some people blame the victim and judge them. But what we don't understand is the psychology that the healing that is needed is so, it takes a long time. And the fear and the mentality to break of thinking so little of yourself and having such low self-esteem, coming from that life and then trying to live a normal life in society is so hard. And you don't feel like the same person anymore. So that happens a lot where they go back to the life. And I think the best way to understand that is to read survivors' books, because they explain why it took them so long to leave or why they went back and forth. You go, why would you do that? If I was in that situation, I wouldn't do that. But it explains the psychology in their thinking, and you start to understand why.
Jenna, they say the same thing about those that have been victimized by abuse. Why do you keep going back? They don't understand why you keep going back. And it is because it's psychological. It has now become a part of your life, and you don't know how to break that cycle. And it is abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It is abuse. It's another form of abuse. So, of course, it's part of the same cycle. You said the average age is 12 to 14. You can really see how the traffickers are truly manipulating young girls because that is the most difficult age for a young lady. It's when her body is changing, her mind is changing. She's either sure about herself or unsure about herself and needs that attention. It's all the confusion. The hormones are crazy. It's the
Mm-hmm.
most confusing time in a girl's life. My mother had four daughters, and she used to say 12 is the icky age.
Yeah, that's
She said,
true.
you're just icky.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is right. Everything's wrong.
Yes, I
And
remember. I remember 12, 13. Yep.
I remember I was clumsy and oh my gosh, my nose is too big, my mouth is too small, and nothing was right. It's just a very confusing age. So I can see how someone can come at that time and try to make them feel good about themselves and tell them how beautiful they are and so forth and so on.
Right.
How
I heard a trafficker call it oh, I'm trying to think. I can't remember the name, but the Brady Bunch. There's a show. There was a girl, one of the sisters, who was not as she didn't see herself as pretty as her other sisters, and he goes, I would go after that girl because she'd go home feeling less than her other sisters. She would not feel as beautiful, but when she was with me, I would tell her that you're so beautiful. You can be anything. I'll help you. I'll love you. And that's the kid they would go after. And they would prey on anybody that they see with vulnerabilities and then use those vulnerabilities to exploit them. So yeah, that's how they
I'm here
operate.
to I'm here to tell you, each and every one that is watching this show right now, that we're all beautiful at any age and every age. We look like God. We were made in His image, and that means that we are absolutely beautiful. And we don't need anyone to tell us that, but we need to understand that we are beautiful just the way that we are. And especially as you're young, you don't stay that way. You change through the years. So how we may look today is not how we're going to look six months or a year from now. But I have a question, Jenna. You said the average age is 12 to 14. How can the parents not know something's wrong at that age,
Well,
at 12 to 14?
yeah. I mean, if so, there's been cases where the kid will not even just disappear, like you would think that they're gone, you don't see them anymore and they're being trafficked. But there's a couple times where it's been a girl. I can give you a true story. So her name's Teresa Flores, and she's an amazing survivor leader in the Ohio, Michigan area. And when she was a teenager, she liked a boy at school. She kind of moved around a lot, was kind of always the new kid. One day she was walking home from school, and the boy she liked drove up to her and said, Hey, do you want to ride home? Well, instead of taking her home, he took her to a house and she was raped by multiple men, and they videoed it and took pictures of it. And then what they said to her was, we know where your dad works, we know where your mom works, we know where you go to church, school. We will show everybody these pictures and videos unless you do something for us. And she was so young and innocent, she thought, oh, like do their homework or wash their car. Well, what happened was she'd go to school every day, go home at night, and then sneak out at night and go be trafficked, and then come back home and go to school. Eventually, her grades started slipping, her behaviors were changing, but nobody really thought much, and nobody asked too many questions. So sometimes it can look different, where a girl can be going to school and she's dressed like the average teenager, and then all of a sudden she's coming with her nails done, she's got very expensive clothing, purses, and she's got multiple cell phones. Those are signs that there's definitely trafficking happening. So it's really paying attention to the behavior, their friend groups changing, loss of interest in sports or music or theater, whatever they're into, and isolating themselves and really only wanting to talk to that one person, which might be their predator or trafficker.
Okay. So as a parent, as a guardian, as an influencer in the child's life, I hear her saying, pay attention to lifestyle changes. If you didn't buy these expensive clothes, purses, and shoes, someone did. We have
Mm-hmm.
to ask questions as a parent. If their behavior is changing, becoming more snippy, irritable, more social on the phone, and you've never seen these friends before, and absolutely several cell phones, we have to ask questions. One of the challenges that frustrate me is parents don't ask questions like they
Mm-hmm.
used to. As I grew up, it was very common that it takes a community to raise a child. If something changed, everyone knew about it, and everyone asked you on the way, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" But unfortunately, as time has gone forward, people tend to turn their head the other way. It is time that we start asking questions to protect our children, to protect the next generation. Imagine, it keeps going out. Imagine if she did not do that, and there were not others educating parents on this new trend. It is a new trend. It's happening more and more. Then you will have a whole generation of broken women. So this awareness is so important, so that our eyes are open, our ears are open, and the reality is we have to accept the reality that there's a new trend. Now, I'm saying that, Jenna, do you agree that there is a new trend for making money, and this is part of that new trend? That and the traffickers are just getting younger. They're not, as my mother used to call it years ago, dirty old men. Stay away from dirty old men and don't sit on anyone's lap. That's what it was when we were growing up. But I hear you say teenagers as traffickers.
Yeah, there was even a case locally to me where I am now, where a few years ago, it was teenagers. They were at their high school campus and they were trafficking each other there. So on their school break, a boy saying to another boy, "Hey, my girlfriend will do this, and you got to pay me this much." That's trafficking. So the trafficker can be anybody. Um, and even kids selling kids. And we also have technology now and social media. And those are tools that traffickers use, not just to traffic their victims on, but to lure them away from their homes and isolate them and recruit them.
Okay. Now we have another set of dynamics then that you have to talk about. You shared what, as a parent, we should look for the changes in our daughters. What should we look for these traffickers that are now younger?
Yeah.
What should we know to start recognizing that our son or our nephew or my cousin is trafficking?
Yeah. That goes to education of our kids, right? Where they're online and then some stranger starts talking to them and they might not think of it. Oh, they're being nice to me. But if they're educated on, say grooming, then they kind of look at the messages and go, wait a minute, this seems like he might be doing that thing I learned about grooming, like where he has other intentions for me and I need to tell an adult. And parents being actively involved, you can't hand your kid a cell phone and just have free access to everything. You give your kid access to the internet, you're giving the internet access to your kid. And there are people out there that will find
Ooh, wait, wait. Oh my gosh. That has to be repeated. That was priceless. If you give your kid access to the internet, social media, Instagram, Facebook, and whatever else is out there, then you've given the internet, which is the world, access to your kid, to your child. That's
Mhm.
worth repeating every single time you talk. The light bulb just went on.
Yeah. Yeah. You're opening up your home and your child for danger, and predators that will, find a way to talk to them and start grooming them. And so, I have an 11-year-old son. We have these conversations all the time. And there's rules set in place for all his, whatever, phone, computer, video games, that he's not allowed to talk to strangers, and what to do if somebody tries to talk to him. And also creating a place of not judging them, but a safe, comfortable place for him to come and talk to me. Hey, mom, this happened. I want to tell you about it. Instead of keeping them where, oh, they feel shame, oh, they messed up, and then the person they go to is the predator. So keeping that open line of communication.
Okay, the other thing we have to discuss is for those that are thinking, I am better, all I have is the sun, I don't have to worry about any of that. Think you better educate them to the truth
Mhm.
that they can be trafficked as a male or a female. How often
Mhm.
do you see that?
Well, it's one of those things that it's underreported. Yes, women and girls get trafficked more, but men are certainly trafficked, not just for labor, for sex. And it's not just LGBTQ community. And it's kind of that underreported crime, just like rape. And I think the reason for that is that we live in this toxic masculinity, like society, where men are taught you're tough, you're strong, you don't cry, you can never be a victim. Men aren't victims of rape. Men aren't would never be a victim of sex trafficking. And so they don't speak up because they're brought up to believe that they have to be tough and strong and they can't be victims of anything, but they do, and then they don't report it. So understanding that it does happen to men, women, children, everywhere in all different ways, labor and sex trafficking, and that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay. It's not their fault. Repeating that message. No victim blaming.
And that's really important. It is not their fault. And I've had being in the field of counseling, consulting, especially Christian counseling. Um, a lot of boys have been approached incorrectly about while they were young, and she mentioned something, a word a while ago, and she said frozen. And because these boys are so young, they were frozen, literally frozen, because it goes against everything that they were taught because of that masculinity. And so they hide and don't say anything because they're literally frozen. And the bottom line is anyone, male or female, can be victimized by a manipulator that is selfishly thinking, how can I make money with the least resistance possible? And that would be victimizing children.
Yeah.
Uh, when you go speak to nurses, what is it that you're telling them that they should look for when someone
Well,
has been trafficked?
yeah, we educate on all the ways that trafficking happens, what it looks like. Um, we teach them things about brandings, for example. So traffickers will often put a
Branding?
brand. Yeah, a branding, but it's a tattoo, but the term is that what they use is branding.
Like
That trap.
cattle? They're branding
Yeah,
them like cattle with the
yeah, but it's
tattoo.
it's with a tattoo. Correct. I have a branding, for example. My trafficker had me branded with a tattoo, um, and it's taking ownership of their victims. So if say for example I went and trained in New Jersey, and I had this ER doctor come up to me and he said, that one slide you had about brandings, like I've had girls come into my emergency department and I've given them exams and I've seen tattoos, sometimes they're here on their above their eyebrow, on their neck, somewhere on their back, sometimes even in their private areas, sometimes on the inside of their lip. Um, and he goes, I always thought it was so bizarre, all these places and these tattoos, and now I recognize that they were most likely sex trafficking victims, and those were their brandings. And it's so important for them to spot that so that they can pull them aside and offer them assistance and trauma informed care and maybe rescue them from their trafficker. Um, and what I mean by trauma informed care, for example, when I train law enforcement, if you're a big cop and you're in your uniform and you got your gun on your hip and you're standing over a girl saying, "What are you doing? Why aren't you at home? Don't you want to? What are you doing out here?" and calling them names, accusing them of prostituting themselves or whatever, blaming them, making them think that they're a choice, that's their choice to be there. Where trauma informed would be maybe taking the gun off your hip for a second and maybe sitting down, giving them a cup of coffee. Hey, are you hungry? Hey, would you like to? When's the last time you were home? Do you want to go to a safe place and talk? I can provide resources and services to you. And I had a detective that I work with, and he says usually about the time that he says, "Do you want to call your mom?" That's when they start to cry and they want help and they want to see their mom. So teaching police officers, to get out of the old way of thinking that, oh, that's their choice, they want to be there, and recognizing they're a victim of a horrific crime. They need help, and you need to go after the buyers and the traffickers and get resources to the victims. That's a huge thing.
The other group that's as important is our educators, teachers, and coaches. Of course, again, years ago, they were people that we could trust, and coaches helped mold us by being available for us to have, to talk to challenges that we were having. And it's so important for us to get back to the basics. Our educators need to be educated for what to look for, how to handle it, how to talk to them, um, because that age group is also very, very cocky, as you know. They feel they're adults, but not adults. So a lot of times, educators or teachers tend to just back off. But how are you showing them that they need to also be aware of certain signs, and they have to expand that being an educator or a teacher isn't just ABC 1 2 3 and chemistry.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to give an example of my own story where I had a sixth grade teacher, and I think we've all had a teacher that we really cherish, that really we loved, that really had an impact on us. And for me, mine was my sixth grade teacher. Yeah,
Mm.
and still to this day, I love her. And Miss Markley, she always took that extra time with me when I was in her class. And she really, I often stood up for the kid that was being bullied, and she always valued that in me. And my studies were important, but she really taught me about having good character, and integrity was really important, more so than maybe getting a B or an A. So um, she kept in touch with me over the years. And even when I dropped out of high school, she would still send me birthday cards and all of that. And it made me feel so loved because I felt so much shame around my community. I didn't want them to see me. And When I decided to get away from my trafficker, one thing I wanted was my GED. And I felt like I needed that because and realistically for victims, that's another reason that's so hard. They have big gaps in job history. They have a criminal record. They have all this trauma. So they're going out into the world to start a new life. It's not that simple. And I felt like, well, what is my new life going to look like when I get away from him? And I felt like a GED would be a good start. So I reached out to her, and I would sometimes sneak away, sometimes with him knowing, go and study. And she didn't know I was being trafficked. She didn't know my situation, but she helped me study, and I passed my GED, which, passing my GED while being trafficked, any kind of exam, felt like I got my PhD. I couldn't believe that I did that. And I later told her, I'd like to give her an award someday. I later told her, I said, you helped me escape my trafficker by doing that. And what led me to feeling safe with you was you keeping in touch with me and letting know that you still cared and that you didn't judge me for dropping out of high school, that you just loved me for me, that I was good enough as is and I had value. And that changed my whole life. I mean, what if I never got away from him? So, showing your students that you care about them just as humans, that you're there for them. If they need to talk about anything, that they can come to you, and paying attention to things and bringing up stuff that they might not be able to talk about at home, where you could potentially save their lives and definitely change their lives.
I want you to know that Jenna is just as dear and precious as her teacher at sixth grade. So she definitely has such an impact on her life that she's actually doing the same thing that her sixth grade teacher did at that time. She started a foundation, the Jenna Mckaye Foundation, so that her purpose is to educate others around the world to be that light, that encouraging light where they too numbers that exceed one from a sixth grade teacher. You want to tell them a little bit about the Jenna Mckaye Foundation? So proud.
Yeah. So a few things we do. I do a lot of training and education. So like you mentioned, law enforcement, firefighters, hospital staff, and the public in general, just how to identify victims and how to respond. And then a lot of speaking, sharing my story. And when I share my story, it's my journey of what I survived, but also my healing journey, which is something I'm most proud of, and what it looked like for me to heal and overcome that kind of trauma. And then we also provide, we set up victims with services and resources they might need. And we provide equine therapy. We fund it for them. And some might say, why the horse? What does a horse have to do with a sex trafficking victim? And horses have been always healing for me. Well, the horse is a prey animal. And when it experiences a threat, it wants to get as far away from that threat as possible. And we as humans want to do the same thing. The difference is when the threat's gone, the horse goes back to a calm, relaxed state, almost as if that trauma never happened, where we stay in PTSD, anxiety, fear, anger, all these negative emotions. Yeah. So the horse teaches us to get grounded again, get calm, relaxed. When you're riding a horse, it picks up on all of your feelings. So you have to be calm and they're coming from a world of fear. So they're learning how to trust a 1,000-pound animal. And it's a really beautiful thing to watch. And it teaches them responsibility and hard work and accountability and all those great important things, life skills. So it's amazing to see victims up on a horse.
It's also amazing to watch you talk about the foundation and see you smile. I see that it's a really big part of your heart.
Yeah. I'm really grateful to do this work. It's a dream come true.
And she loves horses. I see so many pictures of her son and her with their horses. She loves horses. She continuously tries to share her story so that others will understand that they are not alone. They are not alone. It's not just happening to them. They're not in this isolated world by themselves. and there is always a way out. The word tells us that God will take everything that was meant for evil and destruction and turn it around for his good. And because of her journey and how he's brought her through and separated her from her trafficker and her boldness, she is sharing her life, telling her story so that others can see. So not only does she go around and speaking and educating and unveiling her personal life unselfishly, but she has the foundation. But I saw something online that made me just start tearing up. I saw a contract in your hand and a pen. You want to tell us about that?
Yes. So really shocking. I mean, I always thought maybe someday that this could happen, but I have a book that's about to be published. We're getting to the very ending, the stages of that. And then I also had producers reach out to me, and they want to make, they've optioned my story into a movie. So it'll be on film. It's still, at the very beginning screenwriting stages, but within the next couple years it'll be out. And I'll be sharing on social media, Instagram and Facebook, if you want to follow kind of behind the scenes as that progresses. So it's just another medium that I'm thankful for, to offer hope and help and the healing journey to others. Yeah.
It's so exciting because you'll be able to offer that all over the world as you are doing. He has taken you from this place where your trafficker tried to make you feel so ashamed to publicizing you all over from city to city, state to state, now in the foundation and a book and a movie. Shame. He turned that around. God turned that around as an avenue to helping
Yeah.
others.
And
We
if I can,
can,
the biggest thing that my faith has brought me to, as outside of just this work, which is such a gift, but forgiveness for my trafficker and the men who
wow.
fought and raped me. I spent years in anger and keeping people at a distance and frustrated and in this bitterness, and that led me, I'm like, I don't want to feel this way anymore, and how do I let go of this, and how do I have healthy relationships in my life and let people in and trust people. And that led me through the journey of forgiveness, and it wasn't like overnight. It was a lot of therapy. I'm still in therapy, and a lot of understanding that forgiveness doesn't minimize what they did to me. It doesn't mean that there shouldn't have been justice, and it doesn't take away from the pain that I feel and the anger that I felt, but it allows me to be free, that I get to move on with my life and not have them holding me down. They already caused me enough suffering and pain, where 16 years later, they don't do that. They don't have that hold over me anymore. And I get to be a happy, healthy person. And that's what forgiveness has led me to. And I don't think I would have ever been able to get to that point without my relationship with God. So,
There is nothing in life without him. He's the greatest father that earthly father can never fit, shoes they can never fill. He's unjudgmental, he's loving, compassionate. He will bring justice to our lives. We can talk to him about anything and no one has to know, because it's between him and us. And there's no greater confidant. And he is always letting us know how loved we are and how beautiful we are to him. He brings peace to our spirit and our soul, and he makes us feel love again. How can we love if we don't experience his love?
mhm.
Forgiveness is not for the person, it's always for ourselves so that we can be able to go forward. We can never go forward, people of God, without forgiveness. Because even when Jesus was experiencing the greatest pain possible, he said, Father, forgive them. they don't know what they're doing. And a lot of times in the same scenario, a different scenario, but the same subject, forgiveness, in their ignorance or their sickness, they really don't understand what they're doing, that they are truly destroying a mindset and a mind that it takes a while to heal. I don't think, Jenna, listening to it's really all about the heart healing. It sounds like the mind and the way we see ourselves has to heal. So I don't think first. So I don't think they realize, just like Jesus said, they don't realize what they're doing. I don't think they realize the depth of what they're doing. They're looking at the body. Well, it's the body, but it's more than that. It's the mind. What do you
Mhm.
think?
Yeah, for sure. It's something that my therapist has taught me is I thought that all my trauma was in my mind. I mean, obviously my heart was broken, but my mind is where my complex PTSD is and where I struggled and where I have these flashbacks and nightmares and panic attacks. And I spent so many years working on my mind. And then we had this amazing, it was actually art therapy that she talked to me, and I learned through drawing pictures and looking and letting my body react that I had a lot of trauma still stored in my body, in my nervous system, and it was releasing. And I was like, wow. And I was so disconnected for such a long time and from my body. And I'm very good at disassociating. And I learned that through my trauma is I disassociated from myself and places as a survival mechanism. It was all survival. And my brain was changed through my rapes. My brain was rewired. So I had to learn that I'm still learning in therapy to understand that my body, my trauma is stored and how to release it and heal my mind and my body.
So, what best advice can you give those that are feeling, well, number one, trapped? Let's start with that one. What is the best advice that you could give someone that's feeling trapped in the situation that they're in?
Well, there, even if you feel so trapped and so hopeless, and I know what that feeling is, I felt that so many times. Um, there is always hope, and there are people out there that will help you, and if you ask for it, whether it's from a trusted friend or a family member or law enforcement or somebody, a hospital calling 911, there are people that will help you, and not just temporarily to get you out of whatever your situation is, but long term, and help you build a whole new life, and help you with all the things that seem very overwhelming, and they'll take it step by step with you. And there's always opportunity for healing, and the healing journey for me is one of my favorite things. It can be hard. It's hard to talk about it. It's hard to move forward. You want to leave it behind. I get it, because it was 6 years before I sought help. And but
Wow.
the longer you keep it in, the bigger it comes out. So just slowly seeking help, it's always there. And you can do it. The same strength you used to survive whatever it is you're surviving is the same strength you use to heal.
Hmm. And that was my next question. That's awesome. I was going to ask you, what advice would you give someone who is currently going through that healing? Don't give your life away. You deserve the right to live your life, to be happy, and to have life more abundantly, which is what Jesus gave his life for. Now, what about you? You have an amazing son. I've watched him over the years growing taller and taller. The boy is all legs, by the way. Uh,
Yeah.
he's all legs. But is there any plans in the future for you to be a Mrs.? Or have you shared your heart with anyone at this point?
Yes.
Mhm.
I love that question,
Could that
because I
be
actually was doing a law enforcement training, and two officers came up to me after, and they asked me two law enforcement related questions. And then one asked, they said, you don't have to answer, and I'm sorry if this is, intrusive, but do you still believe in love after everything you've been through? And I said, well, I am in love. And yes, I do. And, it's been a long journey. I've had a lot of hardships. I experienced a lot more in the last 16 years after being trafficked, and a major heartbreak with my son's father. But there's even healing from that. And I have a man in my life. We've been together almost a year and a half. And just somebody I see a future with, and respects my story, understands my story, and really supports my work in so many ways, which is important. And it just goes to show that in every area of your life, everything can be redeemed, and you can have everything that you thought was taken away from you.
Redeemed and restored. So, for those that would love to find out more about the foundation, how can they contact you?
You can follow me on social media. Facebook is the Jenna Mckaye Foundation, and Instagram is just my name. McKay has an E at the end. And you can also go to my website, which is jennamckaye.com, and you can contact me there and also read more about horse therapy. There's some other interviews and other info.
And for all of those that are interested in learning how to gather the information necessary to broaden your mind and thinking, Jenna is available to do workshops. I think it's amazing. And of course, I'm saying that you're available because you need to be, because it's amazing that she is teaching and sharing her story with law enforcement and with nurses, because these are the first responders. But at this point, for something has become, as I tell you, as every day, it's a trend. Parents need to is ask for PTA groups to hold workshops at the school so that they can come and be educated. Churches should have summits and have her come so that she can educate pastors and other members of the church, because trust me, they're in the church, coming to church looking for healing and hope and love. It's time that we uncover and unveil this trafficking that has been like this, because no one wants to talk about it. We must talk about it. We have to expose it, and we need to know the truth, because only the truth will set them free, and they have a right to be free. So it is my prayer that you contact her and expand what even great things that she has done, that you don't wait for the movie. There's too many that can be lost waiting for the movie. And even for those in different cultures, you are not alone. Jenna's heart is as big as the screen. Jenna, would you go to other countries and speak to the women and speak to leaders and share with them your story and expand your hope?
Yeah, absolutely. That's always been a goal, since the beginning, to not just travel cross country, but anywhere where I can reach more and work with the women, and train their first responders, and work, with all different cultures. So
So there you have it. We always need someone to talk. She's willing to talk, she's willing to share. And it's about encouraging others to let them know that there is life beyond what you do. There is always hope. She has been restored and redeemed. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us in this hour. You have blessed my soul. I love you so much. And I always love when people are willing to be unselfish and share and be transparent about their own lives so that they can help others. It's not easy to do, but we are blessed when we do it. And there's nothing more precious than seeing someone else make it through
yeah,
because of our being transparent. So I thank you for that. I thank you for taking time. Please contact her. Let her know how much you appreciate what she's doing. But even more importantly, educate yourself so that someone else can be saved. So
yeah.
thank you, Jenna. We look
Thank you,
forward
Jen.
to the movie that's coming. I look
Yeah.
forward to seeing social media, this position with something shiny on it. So
Yeah.
I see I see that for you in your future. It is so beautiful to see you experience love. You deserve it, and you give so much love out. God bless you. And then
Thank
we'll
you so
say
much.
bye for now. And that's it for this week of What's Your Story? I want to hear about your story. Email me at ewaministries@gmail.com or send me a DM here if you're ready to be just as unselfish and transparent as this bold and beautiful woman has. We look forward to hearing about it. Well, right now we're in Pakistan, so bye for now on Pakistan. Bye for now from the United States. I tell you, we are here for you around the world. We'll see you next week on What's Your Story. Bye for now.